Welcome to the Swine Health Black Belt Podcast, the latest swine health research digested for you. My name is Dr. Clayton Johnson, your host for today's episode. Joining me is Dr. Edison Magalhães with Iowa State University. Edison, welcome to the show. Would you like to introduce yourself for the audience?
Sure, yeah. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Edison Magalhães, I'm 𝗍𝗶𝘀𝗃. I graduated in Brazil, worked there for 5 years in the swine industry, Brazilian swine industry. Came in 2019 to do my master's with Dr. Daniel Linhares in Immunology. Finished that in 2021, and now I'm working on my Ph.D. So it's been a good journey.
Very good. Edison, you recently published an article about PRRS regional control programs. And the article talked about historical programs, because those have certainly been going on for quite some time. Could you give us a little bit of background on those previous regional PRRS programs? What were they focused on, and were they successful in their early areas of focus?
Those programs, they started and they were pretty successful in the beginning. They had a novel technology that was to integrate different diagnostics from multiple sites and try to organize that by the region and give to the producers what is the information, the prevalence in their region for so that stimulated a lot of the producers that started and those that were around their region but were not participating to join. Everyone wanted to join that. So it was a really important tool. Everyone was struggling with PRRS by that time. So we know that if you want to deal with PRRS, no matter what you do, if your neighbor is not controlling, that's going to impact your control somehow. So those programs focus on that side that specifically, and that was a great advance for that period of time.
We've had technology improvements certainly since these regional PRRS control programs started. Do new technology opportunities make the sharing of information better? Do new diagnostic sampling strategies make the information we're sharing about sites more accurate now, Edison?
Yeah, sure. One of the major things that I would say that change over time in terms of PRRS control that applies to regional control projects is the population-based samples that people are using more in the farms, in sow farms specifically, and also growing sites. So we have oral fluids a lot being used, family oral fluids, processing fluids was a great advance. So that gives us a better way to monitor the sites at the site level. And that information also based on the prevalence, also support the regional. And if we look at the diagnostic capability, we have the automation between communication of diagnostic information. So there's a way to access that information on a real-time basis and share that on a real-time basis with the whole region, with all the participants. So we have better diagnostics for controlling PRRS, and we have better communication of the diagnostics. So we are able to do an early detection, and also we could do some early intervention based on those tools.
Yeah, information is power, and the more timely the information is, the faster you can act on it. Edison, in those early regional control projects, were there any areas of focus that they did not include that perhaps could have helped some of the efficacy of those early projects?
Yeah, one of the major things, Clayton, that I see, they did a really good job, like I said, on those diagnostic information, getting that information, summarizing, creating that reports for their whole region. But one piece that was missing in those regional control programs would be an action, right? An action plan based on what the information that you have. So that's one thing that people were having information on a timely information, almost real-time basis. Like I said, diagnostic tools are improving and the communication is improving, but the action piece was kind of missing. So, and also you have the capability to, even though you can stratify how is the regional prevalence, you can have some more severe interventions based on a low prevalence in the region, while you don't have to be so, let's say, don't have to be so strict when you have a high prevalence. So there's a flexibility that you have to take into account.
Very good. Edison, in your paper, you proposed a new model for regional PRRS control programs. I assume you've incorporated some of the coordinated actions as a part of that proposal. Could you talk to us a little bit about the details of your new proposed program? How does it differ from the historic, and how do you hope to help producers with PRRS management with this new program?
Sure, yeah. I would say four major topics within this that are important for the next generation of PRRS regional control programs. So the first two things, diagnostic and monitoring protocols, we're going to use what we learned from the previous programs. And like I said, people are evolving. So monitoring and diagnostics focus on population-based samples, but what we included to what people are doing is also monitoring productivity data. So for example, in the sow farm, parameters like pregnancy mortality, abortions, such factors can also identify you can early identify an outbreak before a diagnostic if you're monitoring those productivity parameters on a weekly basis. So that piece is important along with diagnostics. And the other thing is Dr. Holtkamp proposed recently the update for the site classification, the ASV classification for PRRS. We propose to keep using that on a site basis, but also to create a classification for the region. So based on the prevalence of PRRS in the sites, including in the region, we're going to have a high, medium, low, provisional negative, and negative classification for the region. So like I said, you can be more aggressive in terms of interventions when you're reaching low prevalence, because you're not going to be asking people to depopulate sites that are positive for PRRS if everyone has PRRS. So as you reach a low prevalence, you're going to start being more aggressive. And the last piece is the action plan, which I think is the most important. Everyone sit down before starting the project, agree with an action plan that is feasible for everyone, all the parties, and then you start to implement. And you can be aggressive, like doing depopulation when you have a site that is positive. But you can also, okay, I'm not going to be able to depopulate, but I can do some 2 double dose vaccination on my animals on my positive site, because you know that vaccination reduces shedding. So if you're not going to remove the pigs out of the region, you can at least reduce the shedding by doing vaccination. So we have some components that, for example, if you have a sow farm and the regional prevalence is low and a positive growing site, a site becomes positive, a growing site becomes positive, close to a sow farm that is negative, that sow farm should start doing a weekly monitoring as this farm was doing for like an outbreak. That farm, even though it's negative, should start doing that, because the likelihood of an outbreak increase having a neighbor that is positive. And like I said, if you have a positive growing site that is positive, if you don't want to depopulate, let's do a double dose vaccination. And if the prevalence in the region is low, and if you have growing sites that are surrounding that positive site, you can do a 1 dose vaccination in those sites, at least to increase immunity if they get contaminated. So the good important thing here is that everyone's agree with that. So even though you have different production systems in a region working together, if everyone agrees to take those actions as over time, everybody wins. That's how I see. So pretty much we use everything that the previous regional controls, they did a good job on preparing, let's say, the foundations, but the missing component is an action plan that will use all the tools that we have available today for controlling PRRS.
Excellent, Edison. Thank you very much for all the work that you've put into this effort. On behalf of the swine industry, I certainly want to thank you, because if we can manage PRRS virus better in any region, that's got global benefits for all of us. Thank you, Dr. Edison. Thank you for coming on our show. And to everyone else, thank you for listening to the Swine Health Black Belt Podcast. Please visit us at swinehealthblackbelt.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you won't miss out on the next episode. For Dr. Clayton Johnson and Dr. Edison Magalhães, see you next week. Hey everyone, we're always searching for the latest and greatest research to share each week. If you have a swine health related research trial and would like to come on the show to talk about it with me and share it with our audience, feel free to send an email to healthblackbelt@swineit.com, and we would love to take a look at your research.